Olivia Harris had always been the steady one. At 35, she'd built a life that was quiet and measured, the kind of life that came with routine and predictability. Or at least it had. Until a moment her phone buzzed with a text that shattered everything she thought she knew about love, loyalty, and ambition. Olivia, this isn't working anymore. I need someone who matches my ambition. A librarian can't give me the lifestyle I deserve. I've already moved my things out. She didn't flinch. Even as her heart felt a sudden, sharp pain, she kept her composure, guiding a nervous freshman through the Dewey Decimal System. She didn't waver when a group of middle schoolers stared up at her, eager to learn. The only sign of her unraveling marriage was a brief tightening around her eyes. She finished her shift in silence, and once she was alone, typed her response. "Good luck with your new life, Ethan." Ethan's text had come through while she was cataloging the latest acquisitions for the university library where she'd worked for a decade. But Olivia wasn't just the librarian her husband thought she was. No, Ethan had no idea just how little he understood about the woman he'd married. She had been waiting for this moment. There were signs, small but clear, of Ethan's betrayal, his late nights at the office that never seemed to line up with his claimed overtime hours, the strange password changes on his phone, the new expensive suits that replaced the comfortable jeans she once loved. And then there was the dinner receipt from Le Cirque. $400 for two, on a night he'd insisted was spent working late. 3 months ago, that receipt had changed everything. The moment Olivia had found it, she called a number that would set everything into motion. "Mr. Daniels? Yes, the acquisition can proceed. Just keep my name off all paperwork for now." Olivia wasn't just a librarian. She was the secret power behind a multi-billion-dollar investment firm, one her family had quietly run for years. The library job? It was her cover, a place to escape the relentless expectations of the Harris legacy. And Ethan? He had never questioned why they lived so comfortably while she refused to touch her salary. He assumed her earnings went toward her books. Little did he know, Olivia had been the one financing their lavish life all along. Her phone buzzed again. This time, Ethan was throwing the final jab. "Don't worry about the house payments. Madeline makes enough as a corporate executive to cover them. You should try getting a real job someday." Madeline, the VP of marketing at his new company. Olivia had met her once, at a gala, where she'd watched her laugh a little too loudly at Ethan's jokes, touch his arm just a little too often. Olivia's heart had frozen in that moment. Madeline wasn't just his coworker. She was the woman Ethan thought could give him the flashy life he craved. If only Ethan knew the truth. Olivia didn't respond. Instead, she called Simon, her lawyer, the one who had been preparing for this moment ever since that receipt had crossed her path. "It's time. Start phase 1. "The papers are ready," Simon confirmed. "And the company acquisition. Done. As of this morning. Ethan has no idea he's been working for me for the past month." A new text flashed up. "I know this must be hard for you. Not everyone can handle a high-powered corporate life. At least you have your books to keep you company." Books. Ethan had never understood the depth of Olivia's quiet world. Her love for literature, her passion for education, the comfort she found in her small corner of the university library. He mocked it all, until he unknowingly became a part of her world. Tonight, as she reviewed the final details of her latest acquisition, she thought of him. The man who had no idea that the library's quiet mouse was about to become the roaring lion. The next morning, Olivia walked into the Valiant Technologies lobby like she owned the place. The whispers of nervous employees filled the air. They had no idea who had just taken over their company, no clue that the new owner was standing right in front of them. Olivia wasn't the librarian in a cardigan anymore. Today she wore a tailored Channel suit, her sensible librarian shoes replaced with Louboutins that clicked confidently against the marble floors. The security guard did a double take, clearly accustomed to seeing Olivia in her unassuming library attire when she visited Ethan for lunch. But today she was somewhat entirely different. And Ethan? Well, Ethan had no idea that the very company he thought was the pinnacle of his career had just been bought by the woman he betrayed. His next message flashed onto her screen. "Dinner with the CEO tonight. Madeline arranged it. Get ready to hear about my promotion. Bet that library desk feels pretty small now, doesn't it?" Olivia didn't reply. Instead, she pulled out the reorganization plans for the day's board meeting. Tomorrow, Ethan would learn just how small the world had become for him. The quiet mouse was about to roar. It's still Mrs. Thompson until the divorce is finalized. I smiled, the words almost tasting sweet. The board is expecting me. As the elevator doors slid open to the executive floor, I glanced down at my phone. Another text from Ethan. In the executive conference room, CEO says big changes are coming. Your librarian salary can't even buy one of the chairs in here, lol. The floor was buzzing with whispers, but I couldn't be bothered. I walked past the reception desk, my heels clicking authoritatively on the marble tiles. Madeline, wearing a designer dress that screamed overcompensating, stared at me in disbelief. Olivia? Her voice trembled. What are you doing here? This floor is for executives only. I know, I replied, unfazed. The board's waiting for me. Wait, she rushed after me, her heels clacking desperately behind me. You can't go in there. Ethan's in an important meeting about his promotion. I stopped at the door to the conference room, glancing back at her with a smirk. Perfect. Wouldn't want to miss that. As the door swung open, all eyes turned toward me. Ethan's confident grin vanished the moment he saw me. The CEO, Mr. Reynolds, was the first to rise. Ms. Harris, or should I say Mrs. Thompson, he said with a professional smile. Ethan's voice cracked as he stared at me in shock. Olivia, what? What are you doing here? I didn't waste time on pleasantries. Please continue. I took my seat at the head of the table. I believe we were discussing promotions. Madeline burst in behind me, breathless. Security's on their way. This floor is restricted. Miss Parker, Mr. Reynolds interrupted, his tone cutting through her protest like a knife. Meet our new owner. Ethan's face drained of color. Owner? His voice barely rose above a whisper. I pulled my portfolio from the leather bag and slid it onto the table. Let's start with the reorganization plans. Mr. Reynolds has already agreed to stay on as CEO, provided he reports directly to the Harris Investment Group, which of course means reporting to me. The Harris Investment, Ethan's voice faltered. That's impossible. You're a librarian. I leaned back in my chair, eyes narrowing slightly. Actually, I said, a smile creeping onto my lips. I'm a librarian who also runs one of the largest investment firms in the country. The library job? That was for pleasure. This, I gestured around the room, letting my gaze linger on the stunned faces of the board members, is business. Madeline's hand shot out to grab Ethan's arm, her voice rising in panic. What's happening? You need to tell her to stop. Ethan sat frozen, his dreams of promotion disintegrating in front of him. Actually, Ms. Parker, Mr. Reynolds said, clearing his throat, perhaps you should let Mrs. Thompson, or Ms. Harris, explain. She now owns Valiant Technologies. All personnel decisions are under her jurisdiction. I slid a document across the table. Speaking of personnel decisions, let's talk about the misuse of influence to fast-track promotions. Ms. Parker, your position as VP of Marketing is currently under review. Madeline's face turned beet red. You can't do this, she shrieked, eyes darting between the board members. Ethan, tell her. But Ethan could only stare at me, his mind unraveling. The truth was clear to everyone, even him now. I was the one in control. I flipped open a second folder, letting its contents rest on the table with a deliberate thud. I also need to address the unauthorized use of company resources, like using a corporate apartment for personal affairs during office hours. Their guilty expressions confirmed what my private investigators had already uncovered. You've been spying on us? Ethan's voice shook with outrage. No, Ethan, I replied, my tone cold. I've been doing due diligence on my investment, the affair. That was just a bonus discovery. Mr. Reynolds looked uncomfortable, his eyes shifting between me and Ethan. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. Why? I raised an eyebrow, leaning forward. My soon-to-be ex-husband wasn't exactly private about calling me a failure. He certainly didn't hesitate to mock my career. Oh, and let's not forget using our joint credit card to buy his girlfriend jewelry. Madeline's hand flew to her neck, where a gleaming new necklace sparkled. I smiled, my voice laced with sweetness. Of that charge, it was canceled. Fraud alert, you understand. The room was tense, the board members visibly uncomfortable. None of them had known the real identity of their new owner, or the scandal they just walked into. Madeline stood, her voice trembling. You can't fire me. I have a contract. A contract, I said slowly, that includes a morality clause. Section 8, Paragraph 3. It's clear that dating a married subordinate is a breach. I pushed the paper toward her. Ethan stood abruptly, his face turning red with fury. This is just revenge because I left you. Revenge? I laughed softly, the sound cutting through the silence like a blade. Ethan, I bought this company because it was undervalued and had tremendous potential. Your presence here? Just an ironic bonus. And as for your little text message divorce, well, the timing couldn't have worked out better. Turning to the board, I shifted gears. Now let's discuss the real changes this company needs. Our digital infrastructure is outdated. Our market strategy is stagnant. And, I glanced pointedly at Ethan and Madeline. Our corporate culture is clearly in need of an overhaul. The next hour was pure business. I laid out a plan that would take Valiant Technologies to new heights, watching as Ethan shrank lower and lower in his chair with each passing moment. Madeline slipped out mid-meeting, no doubt to save face somewhere. When it was over, Ethan tried to follow me to my office, his former dream office. Olivia, he called out, his voice breaking, we need to talk about this. Like you talked to me about our divorce? I turned to face him. Or like you talked about me to Madeline? What was it you called me? A quiet mouse? I didn't mean. You meant every word. I did move an inch. The difference is, I'm not just the librarian you dismissed. I'm the owner of this company, and you're a middle manager with a long history of inappropriate workplace relationships. His face went pale. You're firing me? No, Ethan. I'm transferring you to the data entry department in the basement. Same salary, different responsibilities. After all, I smiled sweetly. Everyone needs a quiet mouse to organize their files. The aftermath was everything I'd hoped for. Madeline resigned before I could officially fire her. Though her resignation letter's victim act was laughable, especially in light of her social media posts about dating a married man. Ethan tried to claim part ownership of my assets during the divorce. But he soon learned that everything, the house, the cars, even the furniture he'd been so proud of, was either in my name or owned by my company. You tricked me, he shouted during mediation. All those years pretending to be just a librarian. No, Ethan, I said with a smile. I was exactly who I said I was. You just never bothered to look past your own assumptions. 1 year later, Valiant Technologies had transformed under my leadership. Our stock price had doubled, and the toxic corporate culture had been replaced with merit-based promotion and rigorous ethical standards. I kept my library job, much to everyone's confusion. But those who truly knew me understood. It was never about the money. It was about doing what I loved while quietly building something monumental. Ethan, he still works in the basement, organizing files. And when I visit that floor for inspections, I can't help but smile at the reminder that success isn't about appearances. I've got my books. I've got my company. And I have the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes the best stories are the ones where the quiet librarian turns out to be the one who holds all the power. After all, any good librarian knows, never judge a book by its cover.